Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this 17th video in a series of reflections on the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 16, verses 1, 2, and 3, also called the Godly Qualities. If you haven't already, please take a look at the introductory video on this series. It explains kind of what I'm doing and why. Keeps me from repeating that info at the front of every one of these videos, which are lengthy enough as they are. If you've been following along, you also know that we start off at a place of rest where we can leave some of the cares of the day behind. And in whatever method that is familiar to you, there's various ways of coming to rest. But for here, we just simply close our eyes, be aware of sitting in this case, sitting in a chair, and just let everything go for a while. There's nothing to do. There's no place to go. Just rest. Good. Now, I only take a very short time here because it's not that interesting watching somebody sit with their eyes closed. My suggestion always is take whatever time you need, hit the pause button on this video, and then come on back. Well, as I said, we are looking at the first three verses, of chapter 16, and we are in verse 2. The previous video covered the word Shanti. And in fact, let's just take a quick review of where we are here. Verse 2 in English translation is harmlessness, truth, absence of anger, renunciation, serenity, absence of calumny, compassion to creatures, uncovetedness, gentleness, modesty, and absence of fickleness. And as I said, we just concluded serenity and peace, and we are moving on. I'll keep my notes here. And we are moving on to Apaisunam, as it is in Sanskrit. And this was an interesting one because I just read a word that probably most people do not come across. In fact, I actually first off had to go to the English dictionary to figure out what calumny was. And then fortunately, on the internet now, you can also get the pronunciation because I wasn't even sure how to pronounce it. In a little twist from the norm, we're first going to look at the English before we get to the Sanskrit here. And I have a little, as I was putting these notes together, I came across a few things here. And this may be my only chance to do a little bit of Shakespeare. So it says, did you know, this article out on the internet, calumny made an appearance in these famous words from Shakespeare's Hamlet. If thou dost marry, I'll give thee this plague for thy dowry. Be thou chaste as ice, as pure as snow. Thou shalt not escape calumny. Get thee to a nunnery. Go. Now, everybody remembers get thee to a nunnery. They don't necessarily remember the statement before that. It says here, further, yeah, that's why I don't do this for a living, okay? The word has been in the English language for a while, though, before Hamlet uttered it. It first entered English in the 15th century and comes from the Middle French word calomne, of the same meaning. Calumny, in turn, derives from the Latin word calumnia, meaning false accusation, false claim, or trickery, which itself traces to the Latin verb calvi, meaning to deceive. So that gives you some flavor of what the word is when somebody says calumny. Where are we at? Now, again, I had to go, and this is from the Merriam-Webster dictionary. So there were a series of words, you get the word, it points you to others. So let's just start first off with the English words to this, and we'll get back to where do we end up. But don't forget, these are not having these qualities as the godly qualities. So it's not all of these things I'm going to be reading you here. So first, calumny itself is defined as the making of false and defamatory statements about someone in order to damage their reputation. Slander. Now, other words were pointed to, synonyms here. Malignity, an instance of malignant or malicious behavior or nature. Malignant, evil in nature, influence, or effect. Passionately or relentlessly malevolent. And malevolent, other than a Disney movie, is having, showing, arising from intense, often vicious ill will, spite, or hatred, productive of harm or hatred. So for all of those who've been wondering, well, when's he going to get to the real world? He's talking about all these godly qualities and stuff. I hope that was good enough for you. Now, remember, all of this ill will, malignancy. It's funny, malignant is not a word you want to hear if you've just gone to the doctor and are hoping that the cancer that you're seeing is not malignant. I don't still know why people think that, you know, talking about slander, hatred, ill will and stuff is, quote, the real world. But it's definitely the backlash you get when you stand up and say, why don't we be good to each other? Why don't we be kind? Why not have good peace on earth and goodwill to men? And, you know, I think if you've seen these videos enough, you know that I'm not on that side. And if you would like to be surrounded by people making false or defamatory statements about you, you're welcome to it. But in this is a real chance to take a look at kind of the two sides of the coin. And remember that part of my reason for being here is these sounds, this ill will, defamatory, false statements. I mean, I'm coming to you from America where are we at now? We're in August, couple of months away from an election. Well, I just expect and you can see it on TV already, everybody giving their slant about the other candidate, and it's not just the presidential race. But somehow or another, this kind of dog eat dog, this kind of get in there, this I don't even know what to call it, but somehow or another, we have reached the point where what I'm reading, is considered, yeah, that's the real world. You know, it's a tough world out there. It sucks. And as I said, you know, everybody's idea is, well, it won't suck if I win the lottery and I can do what I want. Okay, I don't think it cures this. So how is that for starting out just with the kind of the fire and the hate and the passion and the malice for that, okay? And you can. America's still a free country. Hope we can keep it that way. But the definition, let me just now go to the Sanskrit here. Remember, we're looking at apaisuna, okay? Paisuna is given as tale-bearing, backbiting, calumny, malignity, and wickedness. Now, you know, for some people, that's the cat's meow. It's like, yeah, no more Mr. Nice Guy. I've had it, and so on down the line. Again, you know, people act as they will act. I don't understand the appeal of it, and that's why I'm here doing these. But if it appeals to you, I'm not going to be of any help to you because we still got other things to do. But somehow or another, and I wasn't particularly looking forward to this, but it really, you know, all of this stuff, and in fact, let me move on, because this is where the crux of the argument about the godly versus demonic qualities comes in. And, you know, if I hear, oh, you're a goody two-shoes one more time, I might just kind of take up some of these things. All right, so paisana, well, we know that there's roots, and you know we look into these words. So paisana, also defined as backbiting, slanderous, calumnious, treacherous, malignant, base, wicked, a backbiter, informer, betrayer, just the people you want surrounding you, right? I'm just going to play it for the people who keep saying, I don't know the real world here, okay? I didn't think it was going to be a comedy today, but hey, that's where we're at. So for all you people who've been waiting for the real world, backbiting, wicked, and treacherous, and betrayal, this is your word, people. Now, the roots of this are kind of all over the place. I have 3 different roots. Peace, which kind of goes with paisuna, is to hew out, carve, prepare, especially meat, make ready, adorn. We have pish, which is to crush and bruise, grind, pound, hurt, injury, destroy. And finally, pid, to squeeze or press out, to press, and again, we're back to kind of harm and injury. So even though we looked at ahimsa, which was harmlessness, we that was kind of a general attitude. This is harmfulness in action, okay? So if and again, I mean the relish at which people plot to undo either their perceived enemy, their relatives. Again, some slight is done to somebody, and we're going to come back and we're going to get them. Okay. Now, just like when we started way back when with honest, truthful, wise, and pure, here I am reading. We don't even need the Sanskrit for this. The English definitions alone do a good job of presenting the case. And my case is that if I present without the without the not these qualities, I think a good portion of the people, even unfortunately those that I know, would go, well, yeah, you have to pay. You can't be nice anymore, right? Because that's just the way it is. And unfortunately, at least in my opinion here, and again, these are all my reflections, your mileage may vary as the saying goes, but the people who insist that the real world is backbiting, is vicious, is dog eat dog, the first place, of course, you look is in your heart. Are you treating the world as such? And if so, then we come to, well, why is the lack of these qualities considered amongst the godly? Certainly, peace and purity and truthfulness. And it should be obvious, and I've said this before, and I would love to have the day come where I don't have to keep saying if in front of these, or it should be, or whatever. It should be obvious that being a malevolent or a malignant spirit, or human being in this case, is not particularly endearing to those around you. Now, as I've said before, I've worked corporate America for over 40 years, and this is again, without the not, this is practically the playbook of how you make it to the top in a corporation. No nice guy, quote, ever, nice guys don't make it to the top. I mean, every one of my reviews was, well, you're too soft on people. You're not getting in there. You're not pushing them and stuff. Okay, fine. I go with the old Italian saying, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. And there are times when you do need to kind of get in there. The problem is when this becomes your way of life, okay? When you are convinced down to your very being and in your heart that the only way to succeed in life is by backbiting and bearing tales and tattling and one of my least favorite people. Oh, look what that one did. Oh, and that one there. To which I say, if you've got that kind of time to be watching everybody else, perhaps you should spend a little more time on yourself. So that is a combination of a lot of opinion you may have gathered there and around these words. But quite frankly, I think it's justified in that if you are up against an enemy such as this, you're up against people who are literally doing everything in their power to make false statements. It says the making of false and defamatory statements. If you've got people around you just trying to ruin your reputation, I believe that the, if you will, the other side needs to be as strong and vocal in saying that this is certainly not only not godly behavior, it kind of goes straight to the demonic behavior. Now, again, as part of this, and we've, how many times have I said, the current phase of, and I'll keep it to America, but I think it's worldwide, of, who's to say what's right and wrong, who are you to say what's right and stuff, and there's always going to be naysayers in here. But the same question, which I have asked in every one of these videos, keeps coming back. Do you want to be surrounded by people who are wishing you ill will? And do you want to be such a person yourself? And everybody's going, well, okay. So that's the talk on the backbiting side, the vicious side. Now, let's go back to the word itself, which is apaisuna, or not. And I was going to mention it, but then I found out in looking over the videos that I did talk about this a little, and let's just bring this back up again. So we've talked a lot about conjunctions. We've talked about nodding, right? So we talked about ahimsa, not harmful. Abhayam, not fearful. And this, of course, is apaisuna. And originally, when I talked about this, I just said it was a simple negation. And later on, and as we read through these, it really turns out to be more than just that. It is a not having these qualities about you. The one that gets me is the Great Pumpkin. It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, and Linus is sitting out there late at night. The Great Pumpkin hasn't shown up, and he's got to come. He's got to come. This is the best pumpkin patch. Not a sign of hypocrisy anywhere. And if you could appreciate that, you'll appreciate what the in front of this means. It is absent from. So now, okay, now that we've given backbiting and ill will and viciousness its due, and that's about as much due as it should get, then we get to, well, what is this about? And then you come to not that. Not even a drop of that in that character. Now, if you've got somebody like that at your back, then you can go places. Because if there is somebody, usually it's your spouse as the most immediate person who's not doing that, could be colleagues at work. It could actually be your boss. Not every manager is looking to squash everybody around them so that they can move on up in the corporation. But I think the key thing here is, having just had this very intense, here's all of the stuff about calumny. What are we looking at when that isn't there in the slightest? And I unfortunately, again, because I kind of see what happens as we go along, I did write down any of the words that were the opposite like that. We could probably go through it, but certainly, productive of, let's just take the last one in the English dictionary, productive of harm or hatred. Well, what's the opposite of that? Well, we're back to, non-harm, harmlessness, and love. Well, okay. Again, if that doesn't appeal to you, one, and I'm going to be really opinion, if that doesn't appeal to you, ouch, okay, I would say you're crazy, and maybe I will. I think if the idea of not bringing harm to people, if not hating people is not appealing to you, God help the people who are around you. And here is where I think we get back to why these words are important. Because somehow or another, the idea of all of these things here seem to be considered part of the toolbox of living on the planet at this point and in dealing with other people. Now, of course, liars that we all are, we blame. Well, I wouldn't have to be that way if, whatever. If my wife didn't nag me, if the boss didn't, make me work overtime, whatever. And again, I call us all big liars because we are, number one. And number two is that if you find yourself in that state, you're not going to be able to change those people around you. The only way that they change is that they see that there's something better. So all of this, all of what we're looking at in these is meant for our own being, our own welfare, our own change of mind. And nobody changes their mind unless they think that the thing that they're leaving behind is better, more productive to themselves than the thing that they're leaving behind. And I know I've said this before, and I'll try to see if there's other parables. I mean, we certainly talked about the, nobody puts new wine in old wineskins and new cloth onto, an old garment. I'm sure there must be another parable or two. It's a very important point. Leaving the old, you kind of have to leave the old. So if and this is again going back to the complete absence of. And we do that, well, yeah, I'm nice to everybody except that one. See, now I need my Zen stories. There's at least a couple of them in there where, the person is, wishing goodwill. The Zen says, well, one should be kind to every creature in the universe. And usually the disciples are, okay, I got it, but I don't like that. Can we make sure that, that person's excluded from everyone in the universe? And that's kind of where we're at. When we say not having, we mean not fully at all. Is that unreachable for us? I don't know. Is it worth trying? I'm going to put a big yes on that. And on a lot of these, you might come down to that. People say, well, I can't get it. I'm not going to be perfect at it, so don't even try. Okay, well, there's a winning attitude for you. It may be. Take a look at the words, and we're back again. I'm going to have to look up the parables to get some new ones in here, but we're back to the treasure heart. What comes out of you if your heart is filled with ill will, hatred, and malice? Guess how your speech is going to be, people. Okay? I think I had a lot of coffee this morning. I'm going to explain it away that way. Okay? But really more for that I am sick and tired of people pointing to them. Keep hitting the paper over here. I am sick and tired of people pointing and saying, you know what? This is how the world is. I say, no, it is not. Or if it is, it's time for a change. And so with that, how about that for lively? You see, I mean, most of the time, okay, but we got a lively one today. And so what I'm going to do, I'm looking at the mark that we're at. I'm going to have to, first of all, take a breath here. And I think we'll come. I think there's more to be said. I'll try to be a little more serious about it, but I can't help it. This is a subject that is, oh my goodness, if the bars were open and I could be sitting next to somebody, I'd have to buy everybody drinks because that's how you get people to talk to you. But I would bet big bucks that if the bars was open and there was 50 people lined up, I would say that every one of the 50 people there would say, yep, you got to be vicious. You can't be nice anymore. So we won't be able to do that experiment. And I may, again, always the lone voice crying in the wilderness here going, by the way, people, doesn't have to be this way. But we'll see. So I'm going to take my papers, calm it down a little bit here, have a little water or maybe some more coffee because maybe we should be interesting on the second part. But anyway, let's take a moment right now. As you know, I put this on pause. We'll come back for a part two. I put a little short part two in, and I reflect upon what was said here and see what else needs to be said in the second part. So we'll be back in a couple of seconds. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to part 2. We are looking at verse 2 of chapter 16 of the Gita, and we are looking at absence of calumny. Now, I actually took again, you get a little 2-second to 3-second part 2. I actually took quite a bit of time between these two parts for coming back, because much as the first part may have had a bit of dramatic and flair about it, depending upon what you think of my reading abilities here, I thought that, they should understand what we are really talking about here and why the absence of it would be considered a godly quality, would be considered a quality useful to human beings. I'm going to go back to the beginning of Did You Know, where after reading the quote from Shakespeare that traces the English word back all the way to the Latin calvi, meaning to deceive. And I sat here for a while thinking about deceiving and deceit, especially as a action of one human being to another. And there was just a number of things. I don't know if I'd be able to tell just for time constraint to tell a bunch of stories here. I think the one that still sticks in my mind, and get in here hopefully a short version of it. You may be aware that back in the 1970s there was a brother and sister singing group called the Carpenters. I'm a very big fan of theirs. Of course, I was around back in the 70s and bought their albums. I actually got to see them in concert. That gives you an idea of how old I am here. Okay. And as will happen when you become the singing sensations, you make a lot of money, and both Richard and Karen had their good share of wealth. And Karen had often said in interviews, because they always ask, well, when are you going to get married and stuff like that? And one of the things that she had said was she needed to marry somebody who wasn't after her money, and who could also put up with what life was like on the road for anybody who is a singer. And from what I hear on TV, life on the road is tough. You're away from the family a lot, and so on. And Karen actually did get married. The gentleman, and I'll use the term loosely here for where I'm going with this, basically impressed her. She was convinced, as it were, that he had plenty of money of his own, so he wouldn't be after her money, and that he would, that he was okay with arrangements. And it turned out that in what would be called kind of a grand deceit, not just a small deceit, but a rather elaborate plot. He really didn't have much money. He, I think, leased fancy cars and rented boats and, took her to hotel rooms at places, all to give the impression of great wealth. And of course, it turned out not to be the case, and this was discovered shortly before the wedding. But the Carpenter's Agnes, the mother, didn't want to call off the wedding. Another brilliant move, because all the invitations had been sent out, and how would it look? And so the long and short of this is, through the deceit of an individual, a kind of tragic series of events was allowed to continue. Karen ultimately filed for divorce, but because she died young, not necessarily of the bad marriage, but of a lot of other things. But the divorce was never finalized. I don't know if this man is entitled to half of her fortune or not. I haven't read up on it. But when I go back to the deceit and the deceiving and the false statements here, I just couldn't help but think of that as a terrible thing for somebody to do to somebody else. And I don't think you have to be rich and famous to have people around you try to take advantage of you in some way or another through deceit, through deceiving you. And so maybe a little more calmly than we said in the first portion of this, I still go back to the question, why, oh why, would you want to be friends with, surrounded with, in contact with people who are knowingly deceiving you, approaching you with ill will? It doesn't, it just defies logic for me. And yet, you know, we do it. You know, you look around and go, you know, look what that one's got. Well, it's even hard. I don't tend to travel in that path. As I said, unfortunately, I know people who do, and some of the schemes that, you know, people come up with to either get even with or show them, or again, it's a difficult frame of mind for me to try to emulate, let alone understand. But there are people who literally live their lives hoping to in some way destroy somebody else. And it's not human. See, these are called the godly qualities. But I think what I've said before, and certainly if not before, saying it now, they're the qualities of being human. See, because if you believe that we are created in God's image, then the godly qualities are our qualities. And we are less like our Creator or more like our Creator. And what Krishna is saying here is to Arjuna, and he assures him later on, you know, don't worry, you are kind of meant for this sort of stuff. You're not going to be bringing ill will to people, deceiving people, and so on down the line. But you don't have to go back a few thousand years on any of this stuff. I don't really care which scripture you're reading. If it is a true and loving message, then your relationship to the rest of us in the world is going to have these qualities, because you are acting godly, you are acting good. And I'm not even gonna, you know, as I say, I'm not gonna even give a response back to the people who say, well, that's not true. The fact of the matter is, you as a human being have the ability, have the free will to act lawfully, compassionately, and kindly to everyone you meet. If that is not happening, and you know, again, unless somebody has got a gun in your back the entire time and saying, well, you're going to be mean and you're going to be cruel, unless that's really happening, the choice is yours, and you are making those choices. And all that, so far, all that these reflections have brought up for me is, why would you make demonic choices? What good does it do you? What good does it do the people around you? What good does it do the world or the creation as a whole? Now, some people are just mischievous little elves. Okay, I don't think that there's that many, because I think that the people who really are demonstrating the demonic qualities, and I think at the end of this series I'll read ahead, because it is worth noting, you know, Krishna is not some, again, not innocent of what the world is like, and he does a rather good job after this of describing what I would call almost current conditions in people. I again, that's why I say I'm not into, it's not politics, it's not corporations. It always has to come down to the individual and how they're acting. And so, if nothing else, even if you don't remember, you know, because I'm 17 videos in, 17 different phrases, Even if you don't remember any one of these, what would be useful to remember is, why would I want to do things that are harmful to those around me? Why would I not want to live harmless, full of love, kind instead of vicious, goodwill instead of ill will, and all of these down the list here. And that is so far, and I've said before, I think, where every one of these videos end up. It makes no sense to take these qualities up. Now, everybody's going to say, well, I don't. I really don't. I don't take these qualities up. And we'll give you a little bit and say, yeah, you're probably not calling up the local newspaper and saying Joe Schmo down the block is whatever terrible thing you're going to say. But all of this stuff is at work in us. And we're either manifesting it or not. What is suggested in all these godly qualities is either manifesting certain things like peace, like purity of being, or staying as far away as you can from things like harm and fear and calumny, evilness, hatred, viciousness. That's pretty sound advice. And yet, I will tell you that my experiences, the appeal of doing these things and getting back, I tell you, the relish in people's eyes when they say, I'm going to get back at him. Okay, I mean, did they kill your dog? I mean, are we John Wick here? I mean, what is it that bad? And what in the world are you doing taking up this stuff? And I have to go back to my notes over here. Hang in there one second. The next one up, I was kind of looking through all of this during the break. The next phrase we're looking at in the next video is compassion to all beings. And I thought that was a very good follow-up to this absence of harm and hatred. Because if somebody said, okay, I don't, you're right, revenge, is topmost in my mind, and getting back at somebody and showing them, then the next phrasing of compassion to all beings is a really good one, because it shows a way of acting. Here we're talking about not doing these things. And, people throw up their hands and they go, well, you try living in this world and not, wanting to slap people around and yell at them. I mean, I think most people are still kind of refraining from that kind of physical violence. We either got, every viral video of somebody, right now we're in the mask, anti-mask climate here. So people just screaming as if somebody said to them, instead of, please put your mask on, we're going to sacrifice your newborn, firstborn, or whatever. The reaction to some of these things kind of means that this sort of stuff is going on. So you'd say, yeah, I'm not really like this, and I think that you may not be like this in the extreme, but we all kind of carry a bit of this. So, again, same question is why, oh why, oh why, oh why, and what is the appeal? What is the appeal? I really, and again, this is somewhat, I haven't plugged my book in a while, and which is actually kind of on hold. I had gotten to a certain point, and this seemed to be the thing to do. I'll probably be able to finish that, having finished this. But again, being based on the Screw Tape letters, it is in fact the flip of this, a senior devil tempter writing to a junior tempter, in a way, trying to put forth why you would want to, in fact, be, bringing ill will and harm to other people. So that's kind of, there's our balance and choice. Unless you happen yourself to be a senior tempter in the Devil's Army, leaving that profession aside, the question still remains. Why would you engage in these activities? Is it to satisfy your own desires, or is it that you really are walking around hating everybody and wishing them ill will? And then I would then say, why? Why? And is it bringing you a happiness and peace? And I don't know. But we always end up back here, and I don't think that's going to change as any of these other words. I mean, the compassion to all beings, all I think about is how many rescue animals there are out there right now. Forget human beings. We don't seem to be able to be kind to anything. We're back to harmlessness. I mean, I don't even know if you can actually get a dog or a cat that's actually not been abused in some way. Well, that says a lot about our society when the amount of abused animals and, of course, abused people is this high. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. It should speak for itself. This turned out to be a little bit easier than having to delve into things like truth and peace. We know viciousness, we know hatred, we know harm, and the question is, in what state of mind and heart are you in, that you can, and when is this, a couple of years ago now, that you can take a bevy of machine guns into a hotel room and start firing at people enjoying a country music concert in Las Vegas. And if you think that that's an isolated incident, I suspect that you need to take a little bit look at the news some more. It is the people whose heart and thoughts have been turned into action. What I don't know is how many people are right at the borderline of taking these hateful thoughts and turning them into action. I suspect the number is pretty large. So with that, and with the suggestion that you stay away from these things as if they were a bed of poisonous rattlesnakes and scorpions, okay? Let's get that stuff out of the mind and heart and let something else come in, and it's possible we may all breathe a little bit easier out on the streets. Okay, I know I keep promising to end this one, so we're going to end this one here. Really, this is an easy one for anybody out there to reflect upon. So I leave that to you. And if, as I say, it's not your cup of tea, there's plenty of cute cat videos out on the internet. Enjoy. Until next time.